Take one. Please. Oleron froze. The woman was crouched under a bus stop, two babies balanced in her arms. Rain poured off the cracked shelter roof. Both infants were screaming. I don't understand, Oleron said slowly. I can't take care of both of them. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. Take one. It was late, past midnight. The street was deserted. Oleron had been walking back from a council meeting, his guards trailing behind. He'd expected an empty road, maybe a stray cat. Not this. Ma'am, you need to go to— I already tried. She cut him off. Shelters are full. Churches say come back next week. Social services put me on a waiting list. She looked down at the babies. They'll be dead by then. The twins were tiny, maybe newborns. One had a tuft of dark hair. The other was nearly bald. Both looked malnourished. You can't just give away a baby, Oleron said. Watch me. She stood, unsteady on bare feet, and held one infant toward him. The baby's cries turned to weak whimpers. Oleron's guard, Kyra's, stepped forward. My lord, this is— Stay back, Oleron said quietly. Hi, my beautiful family. Thank you for sticking around with me through our trying times. I really appreciate your love and support. We're finally back again to give you many more beautiful stories. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. He studied the woman. She wasn't lying. He could see it in the dark circles under her eyes, the way her legs trembled, the desperation carved into every line of her face. Why me? He asked. Because you stopped. Her laugh was bitter. Everyone else kept walking. That's not a good reason. It's the only reason I have. The babies cried harder. The sound was jagged, primal. What are their names? They don't have any. She blinked against the rain. I was too afraid to name them. Felt like making it real. Oleron's chest tightened. If I take one, what happens to you? I keep running with the others. Maybe we will make it. Maybe we don't. Her jaw set. But two is impossible. One is a chance. That's reality. She pushed the baby closer. Choose. Or I'll leave them both here, and you can decide when you find them in the morning. She wasn't bluffing. Oleron looked at the child she offered. The baby had stopped crying and was staring at him, silent, waiting. This is insane, Oleron muttered. Yes. She nodded. But you're still here. Before he could talk himself out of it, Oleron took the baby. The weight was almost nothing, like holding a heartbeat wrapped in cloth. I don't even know how to. You'll figure it out. The woman backed away, clutching the second twin. Keep him warm. Feed him. That's all. Wait. But she was already gone, swallowed by the storm. Oleron stood in the rain with a nameless baby in his arms and three shocked guards staring at him. The infant whimpered. What now? Kyra's asked. Oleron looked down at the child, at the fragile life he'd just accepted responsibility for. Now, he said quietly, we go home. Oleron carried the infant through the rain-soaked streets of Umberhelm, his guards flanking him in tense silence. The baby had stopped crying but shivered against his chest, breath coming in shallow gasps. He's cold, my lord, Lyra said quietly, and possibly ill. I know. Kyra's muttered a curse. This is madness. We don't even know if the woman was telling the truth. It could be a trap. It wasn't, Dorian interrupted. His voice was soft, troubled. There's something about this child. Something old. Oleron glanced at his scholar. Meaning? I don't know yet. Dorian moved closer, studying the infant. But I felt it the moment you touched him. A resonance. Like the stories. Later, Oleron said firmly. First, we keep him alive. The baby's breathing hitched. His tiny face contorted in discomfort. Faster, Oleron commanded. They moved through the gates of the citadel, drawing stares from night guards and servants. By the time they reached the inner chambers, a healer was already being summoned. Oleron refused to let the child go. He held the infant while the healer examined him. Malnourished, dehydrated, feverish. He needs warmth, milk, and rest, the healer said. But, my lord, there's something unusual. His blood. What about it? The healer hesitated. It resonates with the wards. The ancient ones. I've only read about this in the twin bloodline prophecy. Dorian finished quietly. The room went still. Alaran looked down at the nameless child in his arms, the baby a desperate mother had offered to a stranger in the rain. And he realized that nothing about this night had been a chance. Tell me everything, Alaran said. Tell me everything, Alaran said. The words had barely left his lips when glass exploded inward. Arrows, no, crossbow bolts, punched through the bus shelter's panels. One grazed Alaran's shoulder. Another embedded in the bench where Helena had been kneeling seconds before. Down, Kairos roared. Alaran spun, instinctively curling his body around the infant in his arms. The baby, Silas, he would later learn, began to wail. More bolts came. Then gunfire. The sharp crack of rifles split the storm. Contact north side. Lyra's voice was ice cold. She was already moving, blade drawn, her body a blur as she vaulted over the broken shelter. Dorian's hands snapped up. The air shimmered, and a translucent barrier erupted around Helena and the second twin. Blood-red sigils glowed along its surface, ancient and furious. Stay behind me, Dorian commanded. Helena scrambled backward, clutching Rowan against her chest. She tasted copper. Her lip had split when she'd thrown herself to the ground. Glass glittered in the rain around her. Figures emerged from the darkness. 6. No, 8. Men in black tactical gear, faces obscured, weapons trained on the shelter. Take the infants alive, one shouted. Lord Marcius wants them breathing. Helena's blood turned to ice. Marcius. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Another volley of bolts. One struck Dorian's barrier and dissolved in a flash of crimson light. 2 more ricocheted off the pavement. Kairos moved like a predator unleashed. He closed the distance to the nearest hunter in 3 strides, blades singing through the rain. The man's scream was brief. Blood painted the wet asphalt. Lyra was already on the second attacker, her movements surgical. A blade through the knee. A second strike to the throat. Efficient. Lethal. But there were too many. Alaran stood slowly, still cradling Silas. The baby's cries had stopped. The child stared up at him with those 2 knowing eyes, silent and waiting. You made a mistake, Alaran said quietly. His voice carried through the storm. One of the hunters laughed. The vampire king, playing nursemaid. Lord Marcius said you'd gotten soft. He didn't finish. Alaran moved. One moment, he was standing beneath the shattered shelter. The next, he was in front of the hunter, eyes blazing crimson, fangs fully extended. The man's rifle clattered to the ground. Alaran's free hand closed around his throat. You hunt children, Alaran whispered. Then he twisted. Helena flinched at the sound. She'd never heard bone break like that. Wet, final. Alaran dropped the body and turned to the next hunter. His movements were impossibly fast, inhumanly graceful. He never let Silas drop. The baby remained cradled in one arm while Alaran tore through the attackers with the other. Claws extended. A hunter went down screaming, clutching his open chest. Another tried to run. Alaran was faster. The man's spine snapped before he made it 3 steps. Helena couldn't look away. Couldn't breathe. This was what the vampire king truly was. Not the eerily calm figure who'd knelt before her in the rain. Not the ancient monarch who'd made an impossible vow. This was the monster legends warned about. And yet, he still held Silas. Carefully, protectively. The last 2 hunters broke formation, scrambling backward. Fall back. Fall back. Kairos caught one. Lyra the other. Silence crashed down, broken only by the rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Alaran stood in the center of the carnage, barely breathing hard. Blood streaked his pale face. His eyes still burned red. Silas cooed softly, reaching up with one tiny hand. Alaran looked down at the child. Something in his expression shifted, softened, just slightly. My lord. Lyra materialized beside him, blades still drawn. Moral come. We need to move. Agreed. Dorian's barrier flickered and dissolved. He moved to Helena's side, offering his hand. Can you stand? Helena tried. Her legs gave out. She crashed to her knees. Rowan clutched against her. The world tilted. She tasted blood again. Hers or someone else's. She couldn't tell. They know, she mumbled. Marcius, he knows what's in their blood. What blood? Kyra's demanded. He loomed over her, still gripping his bloodied blade. What are these children? I don't. Helena's vision swam. The midwife said old magic. The twins shouldn't exist. My lord. Kyra's turned to Oleron, voice hard. This woman is a liability. The children are clearly cursed. You should shut your mouth, Oleron said quietly. Kyra's froze. Oleron approached Helena, still carrying Silas. He knelt, that same, impossible gesture he'd made minutes before, and studied her with those burning eyes. Can you tell me more? Helena shook her head. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. Just they'll keep coming. Marcius won't stop. He wants. Her words slurred. The prophecy, the midwife said. She slumped forward. Dorian caught her before she hit the ground. Rowan wailed in her arms. She's unconscious, Dorian said. Shock, exhaustion, possibly internal injuries. Then we take them now. Lyra scanned the shadows. Before the next wave arrives. To Umbrahelm? Kyra's spat. You can't be serious. Bringing a human and 2 cursed infants into the Citadel. The court will. The court, Oleron interrupted, will accept my decision. He looked down at Silas. The baby had fallen asleep, tiny chest rising and falling peacefully despite the violence surrounding him. These children are under my protection, Oleron continued. As is their mother. We take them to the Citadel. Tonight. My lord. Now, Oleron said. The word was absolute. Kyra's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Lyra whistled sharply. A black carriage materialized from the storm, summoned by blood magic or some other means Helena would never understand. Dorian carefully lifted Helena's unconscious form, Rowan still clutched in her arms. He carried her to the carriage and settled her inside. Oleron followed, Silas still cradled against his chest. The guards took positions outside. As the carriage began to move, Helena stirred briefly. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw the city falling away. The streetlights, the empty roads, the last remnants of the mortal world she'd known. Where? She whispered. Somewhere safe, Oleron said quietly. Sleep. Helena's eyes closed. The carriage plunged into the storm, leaving behind broken glass, bodies, and the ruins of 8 men who'd made the mistake of hunting the vampire king's wards. In the darkness, Silas and Rowan slept peacefully, and Oleron stared out at the night, wondering what he'd just invited into his kingdom. Helena woke to silver. Silver spires piercing a bruised sky. Silver mist coiling through streets that twisted like arteries. Silver moonlight reflecting off buildings that shouldn't exist. All sharp angles and impossible heights. Gothic arches bleeding into one another. Umbrahelm. She pressed her face to the carriage window, breath fogging the glass. Her body ached everywhere. Rowan stirred against her chest, whimpering softly. We're here, Oleron said from across the carriage. Helena's gaze snapped to him. He still held Silas, who slept peacefully in his arms. Blood had dried on Oleron's pale face, dark streaks that made his red eyes burn brighter. This is... Helena's voice cracked. This is your kingdom? Yes. The carriage rolled through gates that opened without touch, their iron scrollwork alive with glowing runes. Beyond them, the city sprawled, a maze of stone and shadow. Figures watched from balconies. Pale faces with eyes that reflected the enchanted lanterns lining the streets. Some bowed as the royal carriage passed. Others simply stared. At her. At the babies. Helena shrank back. They know. They're curious, Oleron corrected. It's been centuries since a human entered Umbrahelm under protection rather than as prey. The word prey made Helena's stomach twist. The carriage climbed higher, winding through narrower streets until the citadel itself loomed before them, a fortress of black stone and stained glass, crowned with towers that seemed to scrape the moon. Helena had never felt so small. Inside, warmth hit her like a physical force. Servants materialized, silent, efficient, and human. They moved with that same unnatural grace Alaron possessed, eyes averted but watchful. The nursery, Alaron commanded.
Now.
2 attendants led them through corridors lined with tapestries and torches that burned without heat. Helena stumbled, exhaustion dragging at her limbs. Rowan cried weakly. The nursery was impossibly beautiful. A circular room with a domed ceiling, painted to resemble a starlit sky. 2 ornate cribs stood near a fireplace that crackled with silver flames. Enchantments shimmered along the walls, protective wards, Helena realized dimly. A vampire healer waited, her expression clinical but not unkind. Lay them here, she said, gesturing to a cushioned table. Helena hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to let go. They need examination, the healer said gently. I promise, I will not harm them. Alaron placed Silas down first. Helena followed, lowering Rowan with trembling hands. The healer worked quickly, her fingers glowing faintly as she traced symbols above each infant. She frowned. Malnourished, dehydrated, mild fever in this one. She indicated Silas. But that's not. Her voice trailed off. What? Alaron asked sharply. There's something else. The healer's eyes widened. Their blood resonates. Like it's singing. I've never. She looked at Alaron. My lord, these children are not ordinary. I'm aware. The healer stepped back, clearly unsettled. They'll need milk, warmth, rest. And she hesitated. Constant supervision. Whatever they are, they're drawing power. The wards are reacting. Helena didn't understand half of what the woman said. She only knew her sons were being examined by a creature she'd been taught to fear since childhood. Will they be safe here? Helena whispered. The healer met her gaze. Safer than anywhere in the mortal realm, human. Alaron ordered Helena moved to a chamber adjacent to the nursery. The servants exchanged glances. One, a thin man with silver hair, cleared his throat. My lord, humans are typically housed in the lower. She stays near her children, Alaron said. Prepare the eastern chamber. Clean clothes.
Food.
Whatever she needs. The servants bowed, but Helena caught their expressions. Shock. Confusion. She was an anomaly. A mistake in their perfect, ordered world. The chamber they gave her was larger than any room she'd ever inhabited. A 4-poster bed. A fireplace. Windows overlooking the mist-shrouded city. Helena stood in the center, overwhelmed. An attendant brought a basin of warm water and soft cloths. Another arrived with a tray of food, bread, cheese, fruit, wine. Eat, the first attendant said. You'll need strength. Helena's hands shook as she washed blood and glass from her skin. The water turned pink. When she tried to dress herself, her fingers fumbled with the buttons. The attendant, a young woman with kind eyes, helped without comment. Can I? Helena's voice broke. Can I see my sons? Of course. The nursery had been transformed. The twins slept in their cribs, clean and swaddled. A vampire woman sat nearby, rocking gently as she hummed a lullaby in a language Helena didn't recognize. Helena approached Rowan first, her heart clenching. He looked so fragile, so impossibly small. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I couldn't. You kept them alive, the vampire woman said softly. That's more than many mothers manage. Helena's throat tightened. I tried to give one away. But you didn't abandon both. The woman looked at her. You chose the hardest path. That takes strength. Helena didn't feel strong. She felt broken. She tried to nurse Rowan, but her milk had nearly dried from stress and starvation. The baby fussed, frustrated. The attendant brought a bottle, formula mixed by the healer. Let me show you, she said. Helena learned. Hated that she needed to learn. Hated that she couldn't provide for her sons without help. By the time both twins were fed and sleeping again, she was crying. Deep in the citadel, Oleron stood before a table covered in ancient scrolls. Dorian spread them carefully, his scholar's hands reverent. Dust motes danced in the candlelight. Here, Dorian said, pointing to a faded text. The twin bloodline prophecy. Oleron leaned closer. The words were written in Old Vampiric, but he read them easily. Two born of mortal womb, bearing blood of dusk and dawn, shall either unite the realms or end them. Dusk and dawn, Oleron murmured. Vampire and human? Or something more? Dorian traced another passage. The prophecy speaks of balance, of children who bridge worlds. But he hesitated. Say it. If they're raised in fear, in division, the balance tips toward destruction. Oleron straightened. You're saying our choice matters. Your choice, Dorian corrected. You brought them here. You claimed them. The prophecy is now tied to you. Oleron stared at the scroll, at the weight of centuries pressing down on a single, rain-soaked decision. The council will demand answers, Dorian said quietly. Let them. Oleron returned to his chambers late. He removed his crown, setting it on a table with more force than necessary. In the mirror, he studied his reflection. Blood still stained his collar. His eyes were returning to their normal crimson, no longer blazing. Why had he done it? He'd ruled for 3 centuries. He'd learned to weigh every decision, every alliance, every risk. And yet, a desperate woman, 2 crying infants. He'd knelt in the rain like a fool. A knock at the door. My lord. A servant's voice, apologetic. The council has convened. They demand your presence at dawn. Oleron closed his eyes. Of course they did. Tell them I will attend. They request you bring the human woman. And the children. Oleron's jaw tightened. They request. They insist, my lord. Silence. Then, inform the council I will present Helena Vargas and her sons openly. If they wish to challenge my decision, they may do so to my face. The servant fled. Oleron looked toward the nursery, separated from his chambers by stone and shadow. 2 infants who might unite kingdoms or destroy them. 1 human mother who'd offered him an impossible choice. And a vampire king who'd answered in a way that defied every rule he'd spent centuries upholding. What have I done? He whispered to the empty room. The only answer was the distant cry of a newborn, echoing through the citadel. Dawn was coming, and with it judgment. Dawn never came to Umberhelm. Instead, the sky lightened to perpetual twilight, a bruised purple that hung over the citadel like a held breath. Helena stood before her mirror, dressed in clothes a servant had laid out. Deep burgundy fabric that felt too fine, too expensive. Her hands shook as she tried to braid her hair. A knock. It's time, Lyra said from the doorway. Helena's stomach dropped. I can't. You can. Lyra's expression was unreadable. Your sons need you strong. So be strong. In the nursery, Rowan and Silas had been placed in ornate bassinets, portable cradles with silver filigree that hummed with protective enchantments. They slept peacefully, unaware of what was coming. Helena reached down, touching Rowan's tiny hand. I won't let them take you, she whispered. They won't, Oleron said from behind her. He wore his crown again, a circlet of black metal and blood rubies. His face was expressionless, but something flickered in his eyes when he looked at the twins. Stay beside me, he said, no matter what is said. Helena nodded, not trusting her voice. The council chamber was a cathedral of shadow. Vaulted ceilings stretched impossibly high. Stained glass windows depicted ancient battles, vampires and humans locked in eternal conflict, rendered in crimson and black. Rows of stone seats curved in a semicircle, and upon them sat the council. 12 vampires. Ancient, powerful, draped in elaborate robes that spoke of centuries of accumulated wealth and influence. Their eyes tracked Helena as she entered. She felt like prey walking into a den of predators. The bassinets were placed on a raised dais. Helena stood beside them, one hand gripping the edge of Silas's cradle for support. Oleron took his place at the center, facing the council. Lord Draven, One vampire began, a woman with silver hair cascading to her waist. You summoned us with urgency, yet you bring this. Her gaze swept over Helena with undisguised disdain. I bring clarity, Oleron said. Last night, I encountered a human woman fleeing persecution. She carried newborn twins. She was hunted by Lord Marcius, a human noble obsessed with capturing these children. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Why? Another council member demanded, a man whose face was a map of old scars. Because of what they are. Oleron gestured to the bassinets. These children radiate power. Ancient power. They are not ordinary infants. All the more reason, Kyra said from his position near the wall, to eliminate the threat. Helena's breath caught. Kyra stepped forward, his scarred face grim. My lord, I was there. I felt what those children emit. The wards react to them. They hum when the infants cry. Shadows gather when they sleep. He turned to the council. This is not natural. This is a curse. They are babies, Helena heard herself say. Every eye turned to her. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to continue. They're innocent. They haven't done anything. Yet, Kyra's interrupted. But the potential for devastation is speculation, Helena shot back. Fear was transforming into something sharper. You want to kill them because you're afraid of what they might become? Human, the silver-haired woman said coldly. You do not speak in this chamber unless. Let her speak, Oleron said quietly. The woman's mouth thinned, but she fell silent. Helena's legs shook. She gripped the bassinet harder. I don't understand prophecies or magic or any of this. But I know my sons. I've held them, fed them. I've watched them sleep. Her voice cracked. They're not monsters. They're children who deserve a chance to live. A pretty sentiment, another council member drawled. But sentiment doesn't protect kingdoms. Perhaps, Dorian said, stepping forward with an ancient scroll, you should hear the full prophecy before making rash decisions. He unrolled the parchment. His voice rang clear. Two born of mortal womb, bearing blood of dusk and dawn, shall either unite the realms or end them. The chamber exploded. This is the twin bloodline prophecy, one vampire shouted. Then they must be destroyed before, or protected so they fulfill the path of unity. We cannot risk. Enough. Oleron's voice cut through the chaos. Silence crashed down. The prophecy, Oleron continued, speaks of choice. These children are not destined for destruction. They are destined for potential. What they become depends on how they are raised. And you propose to raise them here? The silver-haired woman's tone dripped with skepticism. With their human mother? In the heart of our kingdom? I propose, Lyra interjected smoothly, that the twins be claimed as royal wards. Heads turned. Lyra stepped forward, her political instincts sharp. If Lord Draven claims them under royal protection, they become subjects of the crown. Their fate is tied to Umberhelm's fate. It gives us legal authority and, she paused, ensures no external force, like Lord Marcius, can claim them. Murmurs again, some approving, others are uncertain. And the human? Kyra's demanded. Remains as their guardian, Oleron said. Helena Vargas stays with her sons, under my protection. This is unprecedented. So is the prophecy, Oleron interrupted. So are these children. He looked at each council member in turn. I am not asking for your approval. I am informing you of my decision. The chamber went deathly still. You claim them as wards, the scarred vampire said slowly. You claim the human as what? Guest? Prisoner? Ally, Oleron said. Helena's breath stopped. These children, Oleron continued, are the bridges of blood, born of mortal womb, resonating with vampire power. They represent a future where our realms need not be at war. His voice hardened. And anyone who threatens them threatens me directly. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Finally, the silver-haired woman spoke. You stake your reign on this, Lord Draven? I do. She studied him. Then slowly she inclined her head. Then it is decided. The council acknowledges your claim. Not all the members looked pleased, but none challenged him. Miles away, in a human stronghold, Lord Marcius slammed his fist against a table. 8 men.
8.
And Draven slaughtered them all? His advisor nodded nervously. The twins are in Umberhelm, my lord. Under royal protection. Marcius's face twisted with rage. That woman, that peasant, she delivered them right into vampire hands. The people are angry, the advisor offered. Word is spreading that Helena Vargas abandoned her children to monsters. A slow smile spread across Marcius's face.
Good.
Let them be angry. Let them fear what vampires will do with children who carry our blood. What do you propose, my lord? We take them back. Marcius leaned forward. We raise an army. We march on Umberhelm. And we retrieve what is rightfully humanity's property. But the prophecy means nothing if the children are dead. Marcius's eyes glittered. Or if they're raised by the right hands. Helena sat alone in her chamber, the twins asleep in their cribs beside her. The council had dismissed them hours ago. Servants had brought food she couldn't eat. The fire crackled, but she felt cold. She'd come to Umberhelm to save one child. Now both were claimed by a vampire king, declared wards of an immortal realm, tied to prophecies she didn't understand. She'd thought offering one son to Alaran was the hardest choice she'd ever make. She'd been wrong. Watching her children become pawns in a game between kingdoms, this was worse. Because now there was no going back. No running. No escape. She looked down at Rowan and Silas, their tiny chests rising and falling in peaceful synchrony. What have I done to you? She whispered. But the twins only slept. And beyond the window, Umberhelm's twilight deepened. War was coming. And Helena Vargas, desperate mother, hunted refugee, was now at its center. Time moved differently in Umberhelm. Days blurred into twilight. Nights stretched endlessly. Helena lost count of how long she'd been inside the Citadel's walls. A week?
2?
She learned to navigate the stone corridors without flinching when shadows moved independently. She learned to accept food from vampire servants whose eyes never quite met hers. She learned the difference between a respectful bow and a mocking one. She learned to survive. The nursery became her sanctuary. Rowan was the quiet one. He watched everything with dark, thoughtful eyes. He rarely cried unless truly distressed, and even then, his wails were soft, almost apologetic. Silas was fired. He screamed when hungry, shrieked when uncomfortable, and refused sleep unless held. But his eyes, they tracked movement with unsettling precision for an infant. He knows, Helena murmured one afternoon, rocking Silas. He knows this place isn't normal. The attendant, a vampire woman named Mira, smiled faintly. All children sense magic, humans. Most grow out of it. These two. She gestured to where Rowan lay in his crib, hand outstretched toward a shadow that seemed to reach back. They won't. Helena's breath caught. What's happening? The prophecy. Myra's voice was soft. They're already reaching between worlds. Strange things happened. When both twins cried together, truly together, in perfect synchronization, the enchanted lanterns flickered. The wards carved into the nursery walls hummed low and resonant. When Helena sang lullabies, shadows gathered closer. Not threatening, just listening. Once, Silas laughed, a bright, baby sound, and every candle in the room flared golden. Mira reported it all to Alaran. Helena knew because he started visiting.
Late.
Always late, when the citadel quieted and most servants retired. The first time, she woke to find him standing over the cribs, his expression unreadable. They're safe, Helena said, pulling her robe tighter. I know. He didn't look at her. I needed to see for myself. After that, he came every few nights. They didn't speak much. The silence was awkward, heavy with unasked questions. One night, Helena broke it. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Taking us in? Alaran was still for a long moment. I regret, he said slowly, that I didn't walk away. My life was simpler before that bus stop. Helena's chest tightened. But He continued, meeting her eyes. I don't regret that they're alive. It wasn't comfortable, but it was honest. What happens when they grow older? Helena asked. When the prophecy. We ensure they choose unity over destruction. Alaron looked back at the twins. We raised them to understand both worlds. How? I don't know yet. The admission surprised her. Vampire kings weren't supposed to be uncertain. But Alaron's uncertainty felt more real than any confidence. Kyra's watched from the shadows. He saw the wards react, saw the lights flicker, saw shadows bend toward the human woman's voice. It was wrong. All of it. The prophecy wasn't salvation. It was a countdown to annihilation. When they cry together, he told Lyra one evening, the wards hum, like something's trying to break through, or trying to protect them, Lyra countered. You're naive. Kyra's voice hardened. These children are weapons. The longer they stay here, the longer we have to shape their path. Lyra's eyes narrowed. You heard Dorian. Nurture matters. Dorian is a scholar who's never fought a war. And you're a soldier who sees threats everywhere. Kyra said nothing, but his hand drifted to his blade. Lyra found Helena in the courtyard 3 days later. You need to learn to fight, she said without preamble. Helena blinked. I'm not a... You're a mother in a kingdom of predators. Lyra tossed her a wooden practice blade. A mother should know how to draw blood if someone reaches for her children. The training was brutal. Lyra showed no mercy. She corrected Helena's stance with sharp words and sharper strikes. She taught her where to aim, how to move, when to run. You're weak, Lyra said after Helena collapsed, gasping. But weakness can be overcome. Hesitation kills. Helena glared up at her. I don't hesitate when it comes to my sons. Prove it. By the end of the second week, Helena could hold a blade without dropping it. By the third, she'd landed a hit on Lyra, just one, but enough to earn a nod of approval. Better, Lyra said. Now you might survive 5 seconds instead of 3. Helena laughed despite herself. It felt strange. Good. Dorian found Alaron in the archives late one night. The prophecy, Dorian said, spreading another scroll. I found more. Alaron looked up, exhausted. And the twins' fate depends on how they're raised. If surrounded by love, unity, acceptance, they become bridges. But if raised in fear, manipulation, isolation, Dorian's voice dropped. They become weapons. So, everything depends on us. On you, Dorian corrected. You claimed them. You're their anchor. Alaron stared at the ancient text, at the weight of choice inscribed in fading ink. Then I choose love, he said quietly, even if I don't fully understand it. Kyra's met his contact in the lower city. A cloaked figure, face obscured, voice low. Lord Marcius offers gold. Power. A position in the new order. I don't want gold. Kyra's jaw tightened. I want to save my kingdom. Then help us retrieve one twin. The prophecy requires both. Take one, and the magic breaks. Kyra's hesitated. The king will. The king is blinded by sentiment. The figure leaned closer. You're a soldier. You understand the necessary sacrifice. Kyra's looked back, toward the citadel, toward the nursery, where 2 infants slept, unaware they were reshaping the world. One twin, he muttered. That's all. That's all. The storm came 3 nights later. Thunder shook the citadel. Rain lashed the windows. Helena woke to lightning illuminating the nursery, and a shadow moving toward the cribs. No. Kyra spun. His eyes met hers. Stay back, human. Get away from them. Helena lunged, grabbing the practice blade Lyra had given her. Kyra's laughed bitterly. You think you can stop me? I think I'll die trying. She swung, clumsy but desperate. Kyra's blocked easily, slamming her against the wall. Pain exploded through her shoulder. But she didn't drop the blade. They're not yours to take, she screamed. Kyra's reached for Silas. And the infant's eyes snapped open, glowing crimson. Power erupted. A shockwave of pure force threw Kyra's across the room. He crashed into the wall hard enough to crack stone. The wards blazed gold and silver, reacting to the twins' distress. Both babies were crying now. Rowan's glow was softer, dawn-bright. Silas burned like dusk. Helena staggered to the cribs, grabbing both infants, clutching them against her chest. The door burst open. Alaron, Lyra, Dorian, all armed, all furious. Alaron's gaze swept the scene. Kyra's crumpled against the wall, Elena bleeding but standing, the twins glowing in her arms. "Explain," Alaron said, voice deadly calm. Kyra's pushed himself up, wincing. "The prophecy I was trying to prevent. You were trying to steal them." Lyra's blade pressed against his throat. "To save the kingdom." Kyra's spat. "Those children will destroy us." "Those children," Helena interrupted, voice shaking. "Just save themselves. And me." Everyone went still. Dorian approached the twins carefully. The glow was fading, but power still radiated from them. Ancient, unmistakable. "They defended their mother," Dorian whispered. "Even as infants. The prophecy is already manifesting." Alaron looked at Kyra's. At the guard he'd trusted for decades. "Take him to the cells." "My lord." "Now." Lyra dragged Kyra's away, his protests echoing down the corridor. Alaron moved to Helena. Her shoulder was bruised, her hands shaking, but she held both twins with fierce, unbreakable determination. "You fought him," Alaron said quietly. "I had to. You could have been killed. So could they." Helena's eyes blazed. "I won't let anyone take them. Not Marcius. Not your guards. Not you." For a long moment, Alaron simply looked at her. Then he nodded. "Good," he said. "Because the real war is coming. And you'll need that fire." Helena clutched her sons closer. She'd been a desperate mother offering one child to a stranger. Now she was something else. A protector. A fighter. And anyone who tried to separate her from Rowan and Silas would learn exactly how dangerous a mother could be. The scandal spread through Umbrahelm like poison. A royal guard, attempting to steal the prophesied twins. Stopped only by a human mother and the infant's own explosive power. Within a day, the council convened an emergency tribunal. Within 2, human envoys arrived at the citadel gates. Helena stood in her chamber, staring at the formal summons. Her hands still shook from Kyra's attack. The bruise on her shoulder had darkened to deep purple. "You don't have to attend," Lyra said from the doorway. "Alaron can speak for you." "No." Helena's voice was steady. "They're my sons. I speak for them." Lyra studied her. "You've changed." "I've had to." The tribunal chamber was twice the size of the council room, a vast hall with columns carved to resemble petrified trees. Balconies lined the walls, packed with vampire nobles in elaborate dress. Their whispers echoed like wind through a crypt. At the center, 3 thrones. Alaron occupied the highest. The silver-haired council leader, Lady Serene, sat to his right. And on his left, an empty throne for the human representative. Helena stood near the dais, the twins' bassinets beside her. Rowan slept peacefully. Silas watched the crowd with unnerving focus. The chamber doors opened. Lord Marcius entered. Helena's breath stopped. He looked exactly as she remembered. Tall, silver-haired, dressed in rich fabrics that screamed wealth and authority. His face was handsome, distinguished, the face of a man people trusted. A monster in gentleman's clothing. His eyes found hers. He smiled. Helena's hands clenched into fists. "Lord Marcius of the Eastern Provinces," the herald announced. "Envoy of the Human Council, here to address the matter of stolen children." Marcius interrupted smoothly. He climbed the steps to the empty throne, settling into it as if he belonged. "I thank Lord Draven for hosting this tribunal. These are grave matters requiring grave discourse." Alaron's expression was carved from ice. "We are here to address an attempted kidnapping by one of my own guards. Not to entertain demands from a man who sent hunters to kill infants." Marcia's smile didn't falter. "An unfortunate misunderstanding. My men were instructed to rescue the children from a mentally unstable mother who'd fled into vampire territory." "Liar," Helena whispered. Marcius turned to her, his expression shifting to one of patronizing concern. Helena, my dear child, look at you, dressed in their clothes, speaking their language. They've turned you against your own people. You are not my people. Helena's voice shook but held. You're the reason I ran. Because you were confused, frightened. Marcius addressed the assembled court now. This woman gave birth to twins with rare blood that could benefit humanity greatly. Instead of bringing them to proper authorities, she fled. And when cornered, she gave one away to the vampire king. He let the words hang. What mother does that? Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Helena felt the judgment like physical blows. A desperate one, Oleron said coldly. Fleeing from your soldiers. My soldiers were protecting human interests. Marcius leaned back. These children belong to humanity. They carry human blood. They should be raised in human lands, by human hands. They carry both bloods, Dorian interjected, standing. The prophecy is clear. Prophecy. Marcius spat the word. Vampire superstition. We deal in law, not myths. And human law gives me authority over these children. No law, Lady Serene said icily, supersedes Lord Draven's claim as royal guardian. A claim made in haste. Marcius gestured to Kyras, who stood in chains near the wall. Even his own guards questioned it. This man tried to remove one twin because he understood the danger. Kyras straightened. I acted to prevent catastrophe. The prophecy speaks of destruction. Or unity, Lyra countered. Depending on how they're raised. Raised by vampires? Marcius laughed. You truly believe monsters can teach love? Compassion? His gaze swept to Helena. This woman has been manipulated. She doesn't understand what she's agreed to. I understand, Helena said, that you wanted to use my sons, to drain their blood, to experiment, to study, Marcius corrected, for the betterment of humanity. Their blood could cure diseases, extend life. They're not laboratory specimens. Helena's voice cracked. They're babies. They're resources. The words fell like stones. Silence crashed through the chamber. Even the vampire nobles looked disturbed. You just admitted, Oleron said softly, that you see these children as tools to exploit. Marcius realized his mistake. His expression hardened. I see them as humanity's hope, which is more than I can say for their current guardians. Lady Serene leaned forward. Lord Draven, the council grows uneasy. Perhaps a compromise. No compromise, Oleron said. My lord, another council member said. The prophecy is dangerous. The human makes a valid point about jurisdiction. Perhaps if we return them, Oleron's voice was sharp. To be dissected in Marcius laboratories? To be raised among their own kind, Marcius corrected. The council murmured. Some heads nodded. Helena saw it happening, the tide turning. Fear winning over reason. Her heart pounded. They were going to take her sons. Wait. Her voice was barely audible. Everyone turned. Helena stepped forward, trembling. If it means they live, she could barely force the words out. I'll surrender my rights. I'll. Tears streamed down her face. I'll let them go. Just don't hurt them. The chamber went deathly still. Marcius smiled triumphantly. Oleron stood. The movement was slow, deliberate. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. No. Helena looked up at him, confused. You will not be forced, Oleron continued, into another impossible choice. You offered me one son in the rain because you had no other option. You offer them both now for the same reason. His eyes blazed. I refuse to accept either. My lord, Lady Serene began. I invoke, Oleron said, voice rising. The oath of kings. The chamber erupted. You can't. That hasn't been used in. My lord, that oath is binding unto death. I know what it is, Oleron said. He descended from the throne, moving to stand beside Helena and the twins. I bind my life to theirs. My immortal existence to their survival. Any threat to these children is a direct threat to me. Any attempt to separate them from their mother will be treated as an act of war. The room spun. Helena couldn't breathe. You're tying your life, Marcius said slowly, to two human infants? I am. They could die from illness, accident, 1,000 natural causes. Then I will face those consequences. Oleron's gaze swept the chamber. The twins remain wards of Umbrahelm. Helena Vargas remains their guardian, under my absolute protection. This is not negotiable. Lady Serene stared at him. You're risking your reign, your life, for prophecy and sentiment. I'm risking them, Oleron said quietly, for the future. A future where our realms don't destroy each other. He turned to Kyra's. You are hereby exiled from Umbrahelm. You may return only if the twins themselves pardon you when they come of age. Kyra's face twisted with anger and pain, but he nodded. Oleron faced Marcius. You will leave this citadel. You will not return. Any further attempts to claim these children will be considered acts of war. Marcius stood slowly. You've just guaranteed conflict, Lord Draven.
No.
You did. The moment you hunted a mother and her newborns. Marcius' smile was cold. We'll see who history judges more harshly. He bowed mockingly. Enjoy your new family, Vampire King. I wonder how long they'll survive. He swept from the chamber, his entourage following. The tribunal dissolved into chaos. Nobles arguing, council members protesting, servants whispering frantically. Helena stood frozen, staring at Oleron. You bound your life to theirs, she whispered. If they die, then I die. Oleron looked down at the twins. Silas had fallen asleep. Rowan watched him, with those knowing eyes. They won't. I'll make certain of it. Why? Helena's voice broke. Why would you do that? Oleron met her gaze. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, quietly. Because you are willing to give them away to save them. Someone should be willing to risk everything to keep them whole. Hours later, Helena sat in her chamber, the twins asleep beside her. Outside, Umbrahelm braced for war. Marcius would raise armies, call for allies, paint vampires as monsters stealing human children. And at the center of it all, two infants who didn't understand they'd become the fulcrum on which kingdoms would tip toward peace or annihilation. Helena touched Rowan's hand. Then Silas. He bound his life to yours, she whispered. A vampire king. For you. She didn't understand it. Didn't know if she trusted it. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never offer to give them away again. Never. They were hers. And she was theirs. And anyone, human or vampire, who tried to separate them would face a mother who'd learned to fight. The scout arrived at midnight, rain-soaked and breathless. Army, he gasped, collapsing before Oleron's throne. Human forces. Thousands. Marching through the Shadowvale Pass. Oleron's jaw tightened. How long? 3 days. Maybe less. The War Council convened within the hour. Maps spread across the table, old parchment marked with territorial boundaries that hadn't mattered in decades. Lyra traced the route with her finger. He's taking the northern approach. Smart. Our defenses are weakest there. She looked up. We have time to fortify, but not much. Mobilize every available guard. Oleron commanded. Reinforce the outer walls. Dorian, strengthen the wards. Already begun, my lord. Dorian's face was grave. But standard protections may not suffice. Marcius will bring holy weapons, blessed silver, artifacts designed to break vampire magic. Then we adapt. Helena stood in the doorway unnoticed. She watched Oleron, the way he commanded with absolute authority, the weight he carried without flinching. This war was happening because of her, because she'd run, because she'd begged him for help. Guilt twisted in her stomach like a blade. The citadel transformed. Soldiers drilled in the courtyards, their movements precise and lethal. Lyra barked orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. Blacksmiths forged weapons around the clock, the ring of hammer on anvil echoing through stone corridors. Dorian worked in the archives, layering enchantments upon the city's ancient wards. His hands glowed with power as he carved new sigils into doorways and walls. And Helena sat in the nursery, watching her sons. Rowan had grown pale, feverish. His small body trembled, and no healer could determine why. "It's the army," Dorian explained gently. "He senses the approaching threat. His power is trying to protect him, but he's too young to control it." "He's dying," Helena whispered. "He's reacting." Dorian knelt beside the crib. The twins are connected to the world's emotional currents. Fear, anger, violence. They feel it all. Silas was different. Shadows gathered around his crib. Thick, hungry things that moved with purpose. His eyes flashed red in the darkness, mimicking Oleron's. When he cried, the lanterns flickered and died. "He's manifesting vampire traits," Dorian said, troubled. "Faster than I anticipated." Helena touched Silas's cheek. He quieted immediately, staring up at her with those ancient eyes. "If this continues," Dorian said quietly, "if they're raised in war and fear, they'll choose destruction," Helena finished. She'd heard it enough times. "I know. Then we must end this quickly." But Helena didn't know how. She found Oleron on the battlements that night, staring toward the distant mountains where Marcius' army camped. "You should be with the twins," he said without turning. "They're asleep. Mira is watching them." Helena moved beside him. The wind cut through her cloak. "This is my fault." "No. It's Marcius. I brought them here. You saved them." Oleron finally looked at her. "You did what any mother would do." Helena laughed bitterly. "Any mother wouldn't have offered one child to a stranger. Any mother," Oleron said quietly, "wouldn't have survived what you did." Silence stretched between them. "I spent centuries avoiding this," Oleron admitted. "Attachment. Vulnerability. I ruled through strength and distance." He gestured toward the nursery towers. "Now I've bound my life to two infants I barely know. Staked my kingdom on a prophecy I don't fully understand. Do you regret it?" He was quiet for a long time. "Ask me when this is over." Helena smiled despite everything. "Fair." They stood together, watching the darkness. "I wanted to give one away, because I thought it was mercy," Helena said. "I thought if I kept both, they'd die. But now," her voice cracked, "now I can't imagine choosing. I'd die before letting anyone take them." "You won't have to," Oleron said. "That's what the oath means. We protect them. Together." Helena looked at him, this ancient, terrifying king who'd knelt in the rain for a desperate stranger. "Thank you," she whispered. Oleron nodded once. Then horns blared from the outer defenses. "They're here," Lyra shouted from below. The first clash came at dawn. Marcius' forces hit the outer walls with siege equipment and holy fire. Blessed arrows rained down, burning through vampire flesh. Mercenaries wielding silver blades cut through the first line of defense. Lyra led the counterattack with brutal efficiency. She moved like death incarnate, her blade singing through the chaos. Vampire soldiers followed her lead, pushing the humans back. But there were so many. Helena watched from the citadel windows, holding both twins. Rowan burned with fever. Silas screamed, shadows writhing around him. "It's too much," she whispered. "They can't handle this." Dorian burst into the room. "Helena, you need to see this." He led her to a balcony, overlooking the battlefield. There, at the center of Marcius' forces, stood a massive device, a circular frame covered in runes, powered by glowing crystals. "Blood magic," Dorian said, voice tight. "Attuned to the twins. He's going to use it to rip their souls from their bodies, pull them across the realms." Helena's blood turned to ice. "Can he do that?" "If he activates it, yes. It would tear them apart. Kill them instantly." A messenger ran up, breathless. "Lord Marcius demands an audience. Lord Draven doesn't surrender the twins by dawn tomorrow. He activates the device." Helena clutched her sons tighter. Rowan whimpered. Silas' eyes blazed crimson. "He's forcing a choice," Dorian said. "Surrender the twins or watch them die." Helena looked at the battlefield. In the blood, the fire, the bodies. All of it because she'd tried to save them. "There has to be another way," she whispered. But as dawn approached and Marcius' ultimatum echoed through Umberhelm, Helena realized the truth. Sometimes there was no choice. Only consequences. And the consequences were coming. There is a way, Dorian said. They stood in the war room. Alaron, Helena, Lyra, and Dorian. Outside, Marcius' ultimatum counted down like a death sentence. Helena clutched the twins against her chest. Tell me. Dorian unrolled an ancient scroll, his hands trembling. A binding rite. It creates a mystical shield around the twins, making them immune to external magical claims. Marcius' device would be useless. Do it, Alaron said immediately. It's not simple. Dorian's voice was grave. The ritual requires 3 anchors: blood, shadow, and choice. Helena provides the blood, her maternal bond. You provide the shadow, your vampiric power. And the twins must accept both, symbolically choosing unity. What's the risk? Helena asked. Dorian met her eyes. If it fails, Alaron loses his power, possibly forever. You could die from blood loss. And the twins. He hesitated. They could be altered, changed in ways we can't predict. Silence. And if we do nothing? Alaron asked. Marcius activates his device at dawn. The twins die instantly. Helena's arms tightened around Rowan and Silas. Then we have no choice. We have a choice, Alaron said quietly. We could surrender them. Try to negotiate. No. Helena's voice was steel. Never again. We do the ritual. Alaron studied her. You understand what you're risking? Do you? Their eyes met. A current of understanding passed between them. 2 people who'd stumbled into impossible choices and somehow found themselves standing together. Yes, Alaron said. Let's begin. They descended to the Citadel's heart, an ancient chamber carved from living stone, older than Umbrahelm itself. Runes covered the walls, glowing faintly in the darkness. Dorian drew a circle in the center. Helena and Alaron knelt opposite each other, the twins placed between them on a cushioned altar. Once we start, Dorian warned, we cannot stop. The ritual will complete, or it will consume you all. Helena looked at her sons. Rowan's fever had worsened. Silas' shadows had grown darker, more violent. I trust you, she said to Alaron. His expression flickered. Surprise, maybe gratitude. That may be unwise. Probably. She managed a weak smile. But here we are. Dorian began the incantation. The runes blazed. Power flooded the chamber. Ancient, primal, hungry. Helena, Dorian commanded. Your blood. She held out her palm. Alaron produced a blade, ceremonial, ornate, and made a quick cut. Blood welled, dripping onto the twins. Rowan and Silas both gasped. Alaron, your shadow. Alaron's eyes burned crimson. His fangs extended. Power radiated from him. Dark, terrible, barely controlled. He'd spent centuries keeping the monster leashed. Now he had to unleash it. Carefully, precisely. He placed his hands over the twins. Shadows poured from his palms, wrapping around them like protective cocoons. The infant screamed. Don't stop. Dorian shouted over the magical roar. They have to accept it. Helena leaned forward, ignoring the pain as more blood flowed from her cut palm. Rowan. Silas. I'm here. We're here. Choose us. Choose this. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, Rowan began to glow. Soft, golden, like dawn breaking through darkness. Silas answered with dusk, silver and shadow, cool and endless. The 2 powers entwined. Helena's blood, Alaron's shadow, the twins' choice. Light and dark spiraling together, binding, becoming. Outside, Marcius stood before his device. Now, he commanded. The crystals ignited. The runes blazed. He held a vial of Helena's blood, stolen from the bus stop attack, preserved with dark magic. By blood and birth, I claim. The device shattered. Feedback exploded outward, throwing Marcius backward. His soldiers stumbled, confused. What? Marcius stared at the smoking ruins. That's impossible. Not impossible, a voice said from the shadows. Just too late. Kairos emerged, bloodied and beaten. In his hands, a broken control crystal. You, Marcius snarled. You were supposed to. I was wrong. Kyra's voice was heavy with regret. About the twins. About the prophecy. About everything. He looked toward the citadel. They're not a curse. They're a chance. Marcius drew his sword. Traitor. Finally. Kyra's smiled bitterly. Finally something true. They clashed. But Kyra's was wounded, exiled, and broken. Marcius drove his blade through Kyra's chest. The guard fell, blood pooling beneath him. You die for nothing, Marcius spat. Kyra's coughed, smiling. I die for the future. His eyes closed. Inside the chamber, the ritual reached its crescendo. Power exploded outward, a shockwave of pure, balanced magic. Dawn and dusk, blood and shadow, human and vampire, unified. The twins stopped screaming. The glow faded, leaving them changed. Rowan's eyes held flecks of gold, Silas reflected silver. But they were alive, whole, protected. Helena collapsed, gasping. Oleron caught her before she hit the ground. Is it done? She whispered. Dorian checked the twins, then nodded. They're shielded. Marcius can't touch them now. Oleron helped Helena stand. Can you walk? Can you fight? He smiled, brief, genuine. Always. They emerged onto the battlefield as dawn broke. Marcius stood before his shattered device, rage contorting his features. When he saw them, Helena carrying the twins, Oleron beside her, both radiating power, his face paled. No, he whispered. You shouldn't have been able to. But we did. Helena's voice carried across the field. You wanted to use them, to drain them, to treat them like objects. They're resources, Marcius screamed. Humanity's right. They're my sons. Helena stepped forward, no longer trembling. And I choose them. I chose this. She gestured between herself and Oleron. Unity, not your war. Marcius laughed bitterly. You choose monsters over your own kind. I choose, Helena said, a future where my children don't have to pick sides, where they can be both, where they can bridge. Marcius lunged, sword raised. Oleron moved like lightning. The fight was brief, brutal. Oleron's centuries of experience against Marcius' mortal desperation. It ended with Marcius on his knees, Oleron's blade at his throat. Kill me, Marcius spat. Make me a martyr. No. Oleron looked at Helena. Your choice. Helena met Marcius' eyes. Saw the man who'd hunted her, terrorized her, tried to steal her children. I choose, she said quietly, to let your own soldiers judge you. She turned to the human army, mercenaries and conscripts who'd followed Marcius' propaganda. He lied to you, she said, voice ringing clear. He told you vampires stole human children, but I gave them sanctuary. I chose protection over his experiments. Ask yourselves, who is the monster? Murmurs rippled through the ranks. One soldier dropped his weapon, then another. Marcius' own captain stepped forward. She speaks the truth. We saw the orders, the laboratories. Disgust twisted his face. You planned to bleed them dry. Marcius' expression crumbled. I was saving humanity. You were serving yourself, the captain said. He gestured to his men. Take him. They dragged Marcius away, his screams fading into the dawn. The battlefield quieted. Vampire soldiers lowered their weapons. Human forces retreated, leaderless and shaken. Helena sank to her knees, the twins still clutched against her. Rowan slept peacefully. Silas watched the sunrise with curious, silver-touched eyes. Oleron knelt beside her, blood-streaked and exhausted. It's over, he said. Helena looked at him. At the twins. At the citadel standing strong behind them. No, she whispered. It's just beginning. Because the prophecy wasn't about one moment, one choice. It was about every choice that came after. Every day they chose unity over division, love over fear, bridge over barrier. The sun rose over Umbrahelm, golden and warm, while shadows still danced in the valleys, dawn and dusk together. Just like the twins, just like them. Spring came slowly to Umberhelm. Not true spring. The realm's eternal twilight remained, but something softer. The mist lifted slightly. The shadows felt less oppressive. And in the Citadel's courtyards, negotiations between human and vampire envoys continued daily, tense but hopeful. 3 months had passed since the battle. 3 months since Marcius had been dragged away in chains, his crimes exposed, his propaganda shattered. 3 months since Helena had stood on a battlefield and claimed her family openly. Everything had changed. Helena stood in her new quarters, not a guest chamber anymore, but a permanent suite overlooking the eastern gardens. Sunlight, real sunlight, filtered through enchanted windows that let in warmth without burning vampire skin. A human staff attended her now, a cook who made food that didn't taste of ash and blood magic, a handmaiden who understood mortal customs, a guard who nodded respectfully rather than watched with suspicion. She was officially titled guardian of the twin bloodline. It felt absurd. She was still the same woman who'd knelt in the rain, desperate and barefoot. Except she wasn't. Not really. That woman had been breaking under impossible weight. This woman had learned to carry it differently. The twins had grown. Not much. They were still infants, but they were stronger, healthier. Rowan's fever had broken permanently. Silas' shadows no longer writhed with violence, but danced playfully around his crib. They laughed now, reached for things, recognized faces, and their magic manifested in small, controlled ways. When Rowan laughed, golden light sparkled in the air like dust motes catching sun. When Silas cooed, shadows formed shapes, animals, flowers, abstract patterns that dissolved when he lost interest. Helena watched them from the nursery doorway, marveling. "They're learning control already," Dorian said, appearing beside her. "Remarkable for their age. Is it normal?" "Nothing about them is normal." He smiled. "But it's beautiful." Rowan turned at the sound of Helena's voice, reaching out. She crossed to him, lifting him from his crib. He nuzzled against her, content. Silas watched Oleron, who stood silently near the window. The Vampire King had been visiting more frequently. Sometimes he read to the twins, ancient stories in languages Helena didn't understand, his voice low and soothing. Sometimes he simply stood guard, as if his presence alone could ward off threats. He looked uncomfortable with it, uncertain, but he kept coming back. Helena found him on the eastern balcony one evening, staring at the horizon where human lands met vampire territory. "They're asleep," she said, joining him. "I know. I checked." Helena smiled. "You check a lot. They're my responsibility." "Is that all they are?" Oleron didn't answer immediately. The wind stirred his pale hair. "I don't know how to be this. Whatever I'm becoming to them." His jaw tightened. "I've ruled for 3 centuries. I've fought wars, negotiated treaties, survived assassination attempts. But this..." He gestured vaguely toward the nursery. "Fatherhood. I don't know if I'm capable." Helena leaned against the railing. "You know what I thought that night? At the bus stop? That I was a monster. That too." She smiled faintly. "But also that if I gave you one son, at least that one would survive. I truly believed I couldn't keep them both. That trying would kill all 3 of us. You were trying to save them. I was trying to survive impossible odds." Helena's voice dropped. "And I still remember it. Every night. The weight of choosing which child to offer you. The knowledge that I was breaking something that should never break." Oleron looked at her. "You didn't break. You bent. Barely. But you did." He turned to face her fully. "That moment, when you offered me Silas, it forced me to confront something I'd avoided for centuries." "What?" "How empty I'd become." His expression was raw. "I'd filled my existence with power, control, distance. I told myself it was strength. But when you knelt in that rain and asked me to take your child," he paused, "I realized I'd forgotten what it meant to care. Really care. About anything beyond my throne." Helena's throat tightened. "You gave me a choice too," Oleron continued quietly. "Not just whether to take a child, but whether to remain the king who walks past suffering or become someone who stops. You could have walked away. Yes. His eyes met hers. But I didn't. And now, a ghost of a smile. Now I read bedtime stories to infants who manifest magic in their sleep. I've bound my life to theirs. I've declared war on anyone who threatens them. Regret it. Every day. The smile widened slightly. And not at all. They stood in comfortable silence. Lord Draven, one vampire began, a woman with silver hair cascading to her waist. You summoned us with urgency, yet you bring this. Her gaze swept over Helena with undisguised disdain. I bring clarity, Oleron said. Last night, I encountered a human woman fleeing persecution. She carried newborn twins. She was hunted by Lord Marcius, a human noble obsessed with capturing these children. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Why? Another council member demanded, a man whose face was a map of old scars. Because of what they are. Oleron gestured to the bassinets. These children radiate power. Ancient power. They are not ordinary infants. All the more reason, Kyra said from his position near the wall, to eliminate the threat. Helena's breath caught. Kyra stepped forward, his scarred face grim. My lord, I was there. I felt what those children emit. The wards react to them. They hum when the infants cry. Shadows gather when they sleep. He turned to the council. This is not natural. This is a curse. They are babies, Helena heard herself say. Every eye turned to her. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to continue. They're innocent. They haven't done anything. Yet, Kyra's interrupted. But the potential for devastation is speculation, Helena shot back. Fear was transforming into something sharper. You want to kill them because you're afraid of what they might become? Human, the silver-haired woman said coldly. You do not speak in this chamber unless... Let her speak, Oleron said quietly. The woman's mouth thinned, but she fell silent. Helena's legs shook. She gripped the bassinet harder. I don't understand prophecies or magic or any of this. But I know my sons. I've held them, fed them. I've watched them sleep. Her voice cracked. They're not monsters. They're children who deserve a chance to live. A pretty sentiment, another council member drawled. But sentiment doesn't protect kingdoms. Perhaps, Dorian said, stepping forward with an ancient scroll, you should hear the full prophecy before making rash decisions. He unrolled the parchment. His voice rang clear. Two born of mortal womb, bearing blood of dusk and dawn, shall either unite the realms or end them. The chamber exploded. This is the twin bloodline prophecy, one vampire shouted. Then they must be destroyed before, or protected so they fulfill the path of unity. We cannot risk. Enough. Oleron's voice cut through the chaos. Silence crashed down. The prophecy, Oleron continued, speaks of choice. These children are not destined for destruction. They are destined for potential. What they become depends on how they are raised. And you propose to raise them here? The silver-haired woman's tone dripped with skepticism. With their human mother? In the heart of our kingdom? I propose, Lyra interjected smoothly, that the twins be claimed as royal wards. Heads turned. Lyra stepped forward, her political instincts sharp. If Lord Draven claims them under royal protection, they become subjects of the crown. Their fate is tied to Umberhelm's fate. It gives us legal authority and, she paused, ensures no external force, like Lord Marcius, can claim them. Murmurs again, some approving, others are uncertain. And the human? Kyra's demanded. Remains as their guardian, Oleron said. Helena Vargas stays with her sons, under my protection. This is unprecedented. So is the prophecy, Oleron interrupted. So are these children. He looked at each council member in turn. I am not asking for your approval. I am informing you of my decision. The chamber went deathly still. You claim them as wards, the scarred vampire said slowly. You claim the human as what? Guest? Prisoner? Ally, Oleron said. Helena's breath stopped. These children, Oleron continued, are the bridges of blood, born of mortal womb, resonating with vampire power. They represent a future where our realms need not be at war. His voice hardened. And anyone who threatens them threatens me directly. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Finally, the silver-haired woman spoke. You stake your reign on this, Lord Draven? I do. She studied him. Then slowly she inclined her head. Then it is decided. The council acknowledges your claim. Not all the members looked pleased, but none challenged him. Miles away, in a human stronghold, Lord Marcius slammed his fist against a table. 8 men.
8.
And Draven slaughtered them all? His advisor nodded nervously. The twins are in Umberhelm, my lord. Under royal protection. Marcius's face twisted with rage. That woman, that peasant, she delivered them right into vampire hands. The people are angry, the advisor offered. Word is spreading that Helena Vargas abandoned her children to monsters. A slow smile spread across Marcius's face.
Good.
Let them be angry. Let them fear what vampires will do with children who carry our blood. What do you propose, my lord? We take them back. Marcius leaned forward. We raise an army. We march on Umberhelm. And we retrieve what is rightfully humanity's property. But the prophecy means nothing if the children are dead. Marcius's eyes glittered. Or if they're raised by the right hands. Helena sat alone in her chamber, the twins asleep in their cribs beside her. The council had dismissed them hours ago. Servants had brought food she couldn't eat. The fire crackled, but she felt cold. She'd come to Umberhelm to save one child. Now both were claimed by a vampire king, declared wards of an immortal realm, tied to prophecies she didn't understand. She'd thought offering one son to Alaran was the hardest choice she'd ever make. She'd been wrong. Watching her children become pawns in a game between kingdoms, this was worse. Because now there was no going back. No running. No escape. She looked down at Rowan and Silas, their tiny chests rising and falling in peaceful synchrony. What have I done to you? She whispered. But the twins only slept. And beyond the window, Umberhelm's twilight deepened. War was coming, and Helena Vargas, desperate mother, hunted refugee, was now at its center. Time moved differently in Umberhelm. Days blurred into twilight. Nights stretched endlessly. Helena lost count of how long she'd been inside the Citadel's walls. A week?
2?
She learned to navigate the stone corridors without flinching when shadows moved independently. She learned to accept food from vampire servants whose eyes never quite met hers. She learned the difference between a respectful bow and a mocking one. She learned to survive. The nursery became her sanctuary. Rowan was the quiet one. He watched everything with dark, thoughtful eyes. He rarely cried unless truly distressed, and even then, his wails were soft, almost apologetic. Silas was fired. He screamed when hungry, shrieked when uncomfortable, and refused sleep unless held. But his eyes, they tracked movement with unsettling precision for an infant. He knows, Helena murmured one afternoon, rocking Silas. He knows this place isn't normal.